Hi there, welcome to the first official episode of the Adam Kath Book Club. I'm Kath, and here's Adam.
Adam, yay. This is the first episode where I've properly talked in, because last time I was sick.
Oh, yeah, that's true, yeah.
So today's book is Mythos.
Mythos by Stephen Fry. It's just a collection of stories retold by Fry about Greek mythology and legends and all these different stories, and it's really interesting.
Yeah, but before we get into that, I just want to tell you what our book club is. Basically, you know in movies you see people join a book club in school and then it's like they get together every now and then and they talk about a book they've read over the course of a month. Well, we want to do that, but with like people online. So basically we'll pick a book every month and we will read it. We'll tweet about it to our followers. You can follow us on Twitter. We'll link them below. And basically on the last Tuesday of every month we'll record a podcast and you can ask us questions and we'll answer them. You can tell us your opinions and we'll read them out, and we'll also tell you our opinions and our thoughts on the book. So just before we start on Mythos, I would like to tell you, if you want to join in next month, our book is The Handmaid's Tale.
Can't wait to read that one. I have actually been putting off reading it because it wasn't on Audible for a while, but now that it is, we are using Audible mainly to support the book club. If we can get the physical books, that's great, but we both have very busy lives.
Yeah.
So it's mainly we listen to the audiobooks when we commute or when we're working, when we get a bit of time, and it just makes it so much easier to read because we both love to read. It's just a case of when you have the time, and Audible has made it so much easier for us to actually be able to sit down with a good book.
Yeah. So without further ado, let's get into Mythos by Stephen Fry.
Mythos, a very good book. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I've always really loved Greek mythology to begin with. And
we've both read Percy Jackson, you know.
Yeah, we both read Percy Jackson. He's read a lot more than me,
yeah.
But I've been reading Greek myths since I was like 8 or 9. There was this massive book in my primary school that I actually brought home and never brought back to the school. I kind of just stole it. And it was part picture book, part more regular book. Like there was so many pictures and like words in between the pictures. But it was great, and it
just some backstory. She does that a lot. She likes to rob books from school.
Well, not anymore. I've graduated like 5 years ago.
Until then, she was robbing books left, right.
Okay, here's the thing. Bit of backstory on books and schools. Primary school, it was super easy because they didn't really check if you brought it back because there was no system. And then in secondary school, we didn't have a library. We had a room full of books, and then they closed that room down and started using it as a classroom again. So you could just take books from there. No one noticed. So I started taking books from there.
I mostly read those books when I was doing an exam and I finished early. Mm-hmm. But yeah. So Mythos.
So Mythos was written by Stephen Fry. And a lot of people know who Stephen Fry is. He's a very talented actor. He's
comedian.
Funny as well. He hosted QI, and that was always awesome.
Yeah, and he also he did the audiobooks for Harry Potter.
He did. Going into Mythos, I was listening to Harry Potter and then I went straight into Mythos, and it was seamless and it was confusing at times because I would fall asleep to Harry Potter a lot. So I'd just be like there falling asleep hearing about like war and semen. And
the first time I fell asleep like really easy was while listening to Mythos. It was the first time I listened to Mythos and I fell asleep after 20 minutes.
That's the thing though, Stephen Fry's voice. It's so calm, but also expressive.
And familiar, because we've all heard it.
And it's so comforting, it is. So you're just listening to it and it's so easy to drift off. And if if you use Audible, you know there's a sleep timer on it, so you could set it to like 40 minutes and then it will turn off after that. And you know exactly how far back you need to go to re-listen to what you missed when you fell asleep.
Sadly, this podcast is not sponsored by Audible though.
It's not, but hey Audible, if you want to sponsor us, we're over here. So, Mythos. How would you describe this book on an individual basis? Like, how does it stand out from other books?
I mean, I think it stands out just on length alone. It's a very long book.
It is a long book. No, it's about 17 hours?
17 and a half hours.
17 and a half hours
I don't even know how many pages that is.
I don't know. But, like, some books are, like, 9-10 hours, and they're, like, a 300-page book. So I'd say it's a long book.
And it's part of a series.
It is, because I think the one after this is Heroes, and that one's just about like Perseus and Jason and Odysseus, Yeah,
we didn't read that one.
No, we didn't. It's on my list.
It's on our list, but we're not going to do it on the podcast because it's so long.
I mean, I found this book to be very unique in comparison to other books because you get a lot of books like this in ancient Greece. Like you get the Iliad and the Odyssey talking about all these Greek myths and legends and
they're
theogony.
hard to read.
Yeah.
They're not as... I mean, of course, they're interesting stories.
I tried to read the Odyssey, and just the way it was all worded just didn't click in my brain, and I just couldn't get into it. And then Mythos, the way it's described and the way it's updated in language, and he does comparisons. Like he mentions Percy Jackson in Mythos.
That was wild.
Like when he said that, I was like, oh yeah, okay, so you're hip with the times. He's woke.
And he even talks about loads of modern concepts, and it's just great.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it makes it easier for us to understand, you know.
Because he compares certain things happening in the books to like, he was talking about a couple in the books. I think he was talking about Eros and Psyche and comparing them to like Bradgelina. Like they would have a ship name by today's standards because they were like the it couple.
Would that have been Cupid and Psyche?
Eros and Psyche. They call him Eros in the book. They call him Cupid in Rome.
Yeah.
Cupid, with Roman mythology and Greek mythology, a lot of it is very similar, just the names are switched. Like Hephaestus is Vulcan in Rome, and Artemis is Diana in Rome. Juno in Rome would be Hera in Greece. A lot of very, very much the same stories, tweaked names.
Yeah.
So if we mix up, you're gonna know if we mix something up, you're gonna know who we're talking about, or we'll explain. But it's very easy to mix up names.
Yeah, even in the chapter name, he calls him Cupid just because the name is more commonly known.
Exactly, because that's what people would know the story by normally. But he was called Eros in ancient Greece.
So we talked about the start book.
The start of the book was very interesting because it brought to light parts of ancient Greek myth I didn't actually know. The stories in Mythos are very linear. Like there is no way to really fact check when the chronology is because it's myth, of course. But Stephen Fry does a very good job of keeping it in a kind of linear feeling flow.
Yeah.
So it starts off with Chaos.
Chaos.
Who is a being that is everything and nothing at once. And then Chaos has 2 children, I think. Nyx and another one I've forgotten.
See, the problem with this part is it's the part you never really hear about, so it's hard to remember.
I think they have kids that are like Nyx and then another one, and it's basically darkness and light. And then you have Uranos and Gaia, so the earth and the sky. And there was another one.
Uranos and Gaia were the first one that were like really personable. Like
they were like the first ones that were really people. Uranus was the sky and Gaia was the earth, and Uranus covered Gaia, so the sky covered the earth with its body, and that was a kind of cute poetic moment.
It's a poetic way to describe the sex they had all the time.
Yeah, constantly. And like they even go into detail in the book, like they were making gross humping sounds and the children had to hear them constantly.
The amount of times you hear about sex in this book, because it's Greek myth, it's a lot. And
there's so much. You're going to see the word semen and seed constantly. Castration happens a lot.
Yeah, I mean a few times.
Yeah,
the normal amount of castration.
2 or 3 instances of castration go on in the book, or like people gouging their eyes out.
But I mean, it's all entertaining.
It was all very interesting to read. I particularly like how a lot of the stories are either explanations for something that occurs in nature, or they're like
fables, sort of.
Kind of like fables, like they're tales to like warn you against stuff, like fables.
Yeah, because one of them, King Midas.
King Midas.
That's a story I knew that I didn't even know was Greek for the longest time.
Yeah, and like that one, the story of Midas in most cases is usually like there was a king and he was very greedy and he wanted money, so he prayed to the gods and they gave him the touch of gold. But in Mythos, he's actually a really good, hospitable king from a poor kingdom, and he does right by Dionysus, the god of wine's best friend, Silenus, I think, or Silenus.
Like that.
Some of the names are very easy to blend together, but basically Midas does this guy a solid, and Dionysus is like, hey, I'm going to reward you for that. Name what you want. And he's like, I would like everything I touch to turn to gold. Because in his head, he's thinking, I want to be able to take care of my family, my palace, my kingdom. I want to be able to get good stuff for my kingdom. I don't want to tax my subjects. Yeah. He's thinking good intentions. So he says, I'd like everything I touch to turn to gold.
Yeah, but this is where Stephen Fry's humour comes in.
Yeah. Because
when he wakes up, he sees his daughter and his wife, and he gives them a hug. And then he sees them turn to gold, and then the words are, oh, well, I'll deal with that later. I'm sure there's a way to fix it.
He's just kind of like, oh no. Oh, well, it's fine. I'll deal with this later. I'm sure it's fine. I'll just go do some other stuff. And he turns like a bunch of his soldiers into gold, and like all of his like food and drinks and tablecloths and curtains, everything gets turned into gold.
It's like 3 days before he begs for like a way to fix it.
And like Midas at the beginning as well, he was like, gosh, I shouldn't trust this present. But then he's like, ooh, this is great. And then he realizes, oh yeah, you know what? I was right. I shouldn't have trusted this present. Because the gods almost always screw you over.
Yeah, it's like the go-to.
Like, just straight away, it's like, oh, you want to touch gold? Well, everything is going to be gold.
I think he says something along the lines of, my mother always told me not to trust God's gifts, but here I am. But yeah, so...
But that was good. Normally when you think of the story of Midas in like every other telling of it, the cautionary tale is be careful of greed.
Yeah, don't be
But
greedy.
in this one, it's be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't being greedy. He was,
It's definitely similar, but very different.
Yeah, it's like you can wish for something and then when you get it, it's not what you realized or it's not what you thought you wanted. So that was interesting. A lot of it is really cautionary tales.
And then there is the second story of Midas about his ears.
Oh, his ass's ears.
Which I hadn't even heard before, and it's very interesting. Basically, Midas goes off to become a follower of Pan, the great faun?
Yeah.
Yeah. Or satyr.
I think he's a satyr. They call them satyrs.
Yeah. And see, even Fry switches between the Roman names and the Greek names quite a bit. But he becomes a follower of Pan, and he becomes big into nature and all that. And one day, him and Pan and Apollo have a dance-off, basically, but it's with music. They have their own little version of the X Factor.
It was basically Step Up Ancient Greece.
Yeah.
Step Up to the Greece.
Everyone said Apollo was the best. And evil, horrible Midas
was like, I disagree.
I thought Pan was better.
Like, he basically got punished for having an opinion.
Yeah.
Which is basic, like...
That's what Simon Cowell does to all his guest judges.
Yeah, it's like ancient Greece, it was just Twitter culture. You know, like, oh, someone has an opinion on Twitter and they have to get vilified for it. Same in ancient Greece. Oh, you don't agree with this guy? Well, you're going to get donkey ears for the rest of your life.
Yeah, fuck you, how dare you.
Because, like, he gets donkey ears and then he hides it for a long time and then the secret gets out and then he kills himself. Yeah. Because he doesn't want people to know he has donkey ears.
One thing is, he told his barber, I will kill you and your family if you tell anyone.
Yeah.
I guess that wasn't as nice as he'd been before.
Yeah, maybe having the ass's ears turned him into an ass.
Yeah. But, like, imagine just being like, I don't like this, like, artist. Like, saying you don't like Taylor Swift, and then suddenly Taylor walks over, laughs, and then gives you...
And then suddenly you have, like, a body part of an animal or something, like... Oh, you know what, I really didn't like Taylor's new album, and then suddenly you grow like an elephant trunk or something. It was basically like that. Imagine the gods are just really big celebrities.
On Twitter.
You know, they're going out, cheating on each other, fucking everything, having illegitimate secret children. Basically, it's just celebrities in like ancient Greece.
Speaking of cheating, how many of these stories are based on Zeus cheating on his wife?
So many.
It's the Real Housewives of Olympus.
I would watch that. I would totally watch a show that's just like the Real Housewives of Olympus.
Just I would adore that show.
Hera turning around like, so my husband cheated again, so I imprisoned her for 25 years and made her drink poison.
The next great Netflix original, guys.
No, it was very enjoyable. It was great.
What do you think? Well, we've already kind of said we love Stephen Fry as a narrator.
We already love Stephen Fry. His narration of it is great. We're always going to love the way he delivers his lines. He puts great passion and, I mean, he is an actor. So when he is delivering his lines, reading the audiobook, He already knows exactly what expressions he's going to put into it. Not to mention, he's the author of the book. He already knows exactly what he wants to convey in the words and the emotions that the characters are developing and showing as they speak.
Yeah, it's amazing when you have an author that can do the voice acting and the audiobook.
Yeah, like it's great because like...
They know what they want.
Exactly. They know exactly what they want to say.
And then it's bad when an author does the audiobook and you can tell they're not good at that sort of thing. And it's just like, oh, you should have paid someone to do it for you.
Yeah, no, we had a very good... There was like a strike of luck here where Stephen Fry wrote this and he also executed the voice acting for the audiobook. It was very good that it ended up that way because
if it had been anyone else, it wouldn't have felt right.
If it was anyone else, it wouldn't have been the same.
Yeah.
But no, so the book is an individual. It's very interesting. It's very different to other books because it's basically like reading a great classic. Yeah. But in accessible language and easy to understand terms.
And there's also so many great classics in one book.
Exactly, there's so many different kinds of stories. Like a lot of them do blend together because it's a lot of this god wants to seduce this mortal and they die, la la la. There is a lot of that, that's true, but there's so many individual stories that really strike a chord with you.
Yeah.
And this book I think is a great all over read. I mean, I wouldn't, if you were like maybe 13, 14, I'd say read it, but not younger than that, because there is a lot of there is some instances of rape, not described, just mentioned, and then there's matricide and cannibalism, and there's just some stuff that I guess you wouldn't want a kid to read. But if you were a young teen or a teenager, I'd say go for it and totally read this because it's very interesting.
It just shows how the times have changed, how these tales would have been for kids back then. They were like, no, you're too young for this, there's rape and cannibalism.
No, but that's the thing, the book I had when I was a kid, the Greek myths for kids,
it edited all out, didn't it?
So many things were just straight up left out and changed. There were all these things about how Zeus was romancing these people, but Hera in that book was never his wife. And no one was getting punished. They sometimes said Hera was jealous, so she banished her, but never the stuff she actually did.
That jealous bitch getting mad when her husband cheats.
But oh gosh, so the book is great to read. It's the voice acting, the narration itself is very good. I think the characters, of course. Stephen Fry didn't create these characters, but he definitely
brought new life to them.
He brought his own life into them. He did. He breathed life into them the way Prometheus and Zeus breathed life into mankind in this book. It was great. You could see them developing, and you could see them you could clearly see them.
Yeah, a great example would be the birth of Hermes.
Yeah.
Because when Hermes is born, he's really smart from a very young age.
Yeah.
On his first day of being alive, he fucks off to steal a cow from Apollo.
Yeah, he's literally oh hey mum, birthed me, did you? Cool, I'm heading out, see you when I see you.
He's kind of like Stewie from Family Guy.
Yeah, he is.
Even the voice Stephen Fry does from him is a bit like Stewie.
It's very Stewie-esque, and he's just so sassy. He's oh hi mother, I just stole 12 sacred cows. Cook one up for me, will you? And I'm also going to do this stuff. And can you string this gut out? I'm going to make something with that layer. I see how I feel inspired, and I'm going to go take a nap now. Yeah. And there's a scene in it where Apollo shows up and wakes Hermes up, and Hermes is can a baby not get some rest around here? I was born 12 hours ago. Will you leave me be? And it's just wow, he is a sassy little man.
He brings such life to the characters. Even Zeus, when Zeus is getting his origin story, and Zeus comes up a lot, obviously, because
Zeus does, yeah. No, because he's the main instigator for most trouble.
The book split into two parts, and one part basically the origin.
Yeah, one part is literally 5 different stories,
and
it's
then 2 hours long.
Yeah, and part 2 is the entire rest of the book. So
it's called The Toys of Zeus.
Exactly, 2 hours are part 1, and then 15 hours are part 2, and it's all Zeus boning people.
And then even a lot of part 1 was Zeus because he killed Kronos and everything.
Yeah. Well, no, he didn't kill Kronos.
Well, no.
No.
Yeah, that's
he cut off his balls.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, gosh.
Castration.
There was so much castration and a weird amount of people being born from castrated dicks and also from just jizz sliding onto the ground.
The seed-soaked scarf is Fry so elegantly put it.
Here's the thing though. I do get why they were saying people could be born that way, like with the seed-soaked scarf. I know that sounds really gross, we will get to that later, but like when Kronos gets castrated, wait, is it Kronos that gets castrated or was it Uranus?
You're thinking of Uranus because that's how Aphrodite is
Yes,
born.
so Uranus gets castrated, and after that, the Earth is still so new and full of life, it's bursting with like magic and sorcery and energy. So like literally like
The second cum touches it, you get a baby.
You know, here's the thing. It's like when you're prepubescent and you're really sexually charged, but you don't understand it, and then like a light breeze hits your knee or something, and suddenly you get a really weird tingle down below. It's like that, except birth happens immediately after.
I think we got a personal story there.
But like, yeah, no, it's literally like that. Like a slight breeze makes you orgasm, but with birth.
Yeah.
So literally like the tiniest bit of semen will touch the earth and like a life form will spring up from it.
I'm going to go into disgusting detail on this because I believe his exact words were in his excitement he'd already came everywhere pretty much.
Yeah, that was Hephaestus. Okay, so Hephaestus...
No, it was also Uranus.
Was it him too?
Uranus, yep. He was already excited, so his dick was covered in seed.
Ah, yes. So basically he was like, ooh, my wife's pretty.
Yeah. So I don't know. Gods didn't last long. Did they?
Yeah, basically they just jizzed all over themselves, and then when it slid off, they birthed humans.
The seed-soaked dick just went across the ocean, birthing different things. So many different things got birthed from that. I think
exactly,
even the Furies might have been.
I think yes, some of the seed hit the ground, and then some of it dropped in the ocean, and the bit that dropped in the ocean birthed Aphrodite. Basically, a lot of jizz slides into places, be it the ocean, the earth, or a mortal. And babies happen.
Imagine just chilling in your house and like a bit of cum just falls on your face when you're pregnant.
I don't want to imagine that.
You're just doing whatever ancient Greeks did. Like you're probably carving a statue or something.
But yeah, no, seriously, some crazy stuff happens in this book. But like some of the crazier stuff happens, I think, because of the mortals as opposed to the gods. Like character-wise, it's so full of like all these different, diverse, interesting characters. Who were some of your favourite ones?
Oh. Can I start with some of my least favourites?
Yeah, work your way up.
Arachne.
You didn't like Arachne. Okay, Arachne was kind of a pompous bitch.
Yeah.
We're going to give you a bit of backstory. So Arachne, obviously this is going to be a story too with spiders. Basically there's this girl and she's a weaver and she's a really good weaver. And so she's been saying to people, hey, I'm even better than Athena. So Athena's like, oh bitch, you thought. Comes down to earth.
As an old woman.
Yeah, comes down to earth disguised as an old lady and is like, hey, I heard you're better than Athena. And Arachne's like, you heard right. And so she transforms back into her normal Athena self and is like, well, prove it. They have a weave off. That's not like
no need for the old woman disguise there.
True. There's a lot of weird old women disguises, but basically they have a weave off, right? And it's not like a wig snatching competition or anything. It's literally they're weaving against each other. So Athena.
The next season of Drag Race.
Athena weaves the story of the gods becoming who they are, like getting their roles as gods and stuff, and like her own creation and all that kind of stuff, and it's really interesting and beautiful, and everyone's like, oh, this is cool. So Arachne decides to kind of spill some tea as she's weaving, and she weaves hundreds of different stories of mortals getting seduced, raped, and impregnated by all the different gods, mainly Zeus. And Athena's like, oh no. So Arachne's weaving was way better than Athena's, but Athena's like, oh, you shouldn't have done that. So Arachne decides, oh shit, I'm either going to get killed or they're going to take away my ability to weave for the rest of my life. So she goes outside and hangs herself.
Yeah. Just young. There's a lot of suicide.
There's a lot of suicide. A lot of suicide. And so here's the thing. So she hangs herself, and Athena's like, girl, your weaving was amazing, but you shouldn't have done that. But you shouldn't have killed yourself either. Girl, what? Even though she probably would have killed her.
Yeah.
So she takes pity. This comes up a lot. The gods took pity, quotations, and changed people into animals or flowers or trees. So she changed Arachne into a spider, and she changed the noose around her neck into a silk thread, and that's why spiders weave. So it's one of those stories that explains things that happen in nature. Like there are stories that explain the dawn and the moon changing and the sun moving across the earth every day.
There are stories explaining why we have snow and deserts too.
Exactly. So there are ones that explain things and there are ones that are cautionary tales. And so this is one of those ones that explains things. But Arachne was a straight up pompous bitch.
Yeah. Like, the lesson there is don't be a bitch. Don't be
pretty much like don't be so conceited and say, hey, I'm better than this person.
Yeah.
And like knowing full well that person can fuck you up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So another character. I think I'll move to one I did like now.
Mm-hmm.
You know Metis, Athena's mom.
Yes, Metis was awesome. Here's the thing. Neither of us, before reading this book, realised Athena had a mom.
Yeah.
Because in everything we've read, it was always said that Zeus had a bad headache, split his head open, and Athena popped out fully grown. Never was it mentioned that there was a woman living in his brain.
Yeah. It's messed up.
Yeah, literally, Metis was a titan, and she boned Zeus, and she got pregnant.
She loved Zeus.
She did love Zeus. She was his teacher when he was a young boy. Like, I think Metis is his aunt.
That's kind of fucked up now. I remember that she was his teacher. That's a bit.
Yeah, teacher and, but
she'd always say no to him because he tried to.
She says no a few times and then he wears her down because she changes a lot into animals, and that's where we get metamorphosis from Metis, which I think is an interesting, because you get so many words from Greek myth and legend too.
So many words.
So many, like lots of them. But like, yeah, so he basically, once he realizes Metis is pregnant, he eats her. But he mainly does that because there's a prophecy that a son born of Metis is going to kill its father.
Yeah.
So, but Athena was a girl, so it was fine.
So it's fine.
But like Metis can't have sons now because she's literally in Zeus's brain, and she chooses to stay there because she's.
Yeah.
This is where we get conscience as well.
Yeah, that's where we get conscience.
Yeah.
And it's really cool that basically it explains anytime Zeus does something that's not asshole, it's because Metis was like, hey, you shouldn't do that.
Exactly. The little voice inside your head that's telling you right from wrong. That's how that is explained. It's explained that there's a little woman in your brain who's like, maybe don't do that.
It's just really fascinating to see how the Greeks explain so many things we just take for granted nowadays.
Yeah, like you don't even think about it now and you're like, wow, there was like this whole story for it.
And they're beautiful stories sometimes. I mean, that story is not necessarily beautiful, but some of them are.
I think my least favourite character as far as interest goes, and this hurts me to say, but it was actually Echo.
Oh.
And here's the thing. From the time when I was like 10, I have loved the story of Narcissus and Echo. And like, I was literally in Rome at a museum looking at a statue of Echo, talking about the story of Echo and Narcissus to my boyfriend, and he was just looking at me, and I was going on, and I was like, what? And he's like, you know so much about this. And I'm like, oh yeah, no, it's whatever. But like, I had read that story like 50 times throughout my childhood, and I always thought it was really interesting because basically Echo was a big old chatterbox. So she was talking all the time, loved gossip, loved sticking her nose and everything. And Zeus was fucking all her friends. And she purposely misled Hera about it, saying it wasn't happening. So when Hera found out, she was like, I'm gonna curse you. So she wasn't able to talk anymore unless she was repeating what was being said to her. And that's where we get echo from. Because when you say something in a room and it echoes, that's meant to be her saying things back to you because she can only say what you've just said.
And hopefully there isn't too much echo in this podcast.
Sorry, we're in kind of a big room. We tried our best. But yeah, like it was such a super interesting story, and I thought it was so cool. And then you find out about Narcissus as well, because that explains the Narcissus flower. Because Narcissus is super beautiful and he's in the forest, and Echo wants to say she loves him, but he has to say I love you first, or she can't say it back to him because of the curse. And one day he's saying it, but he's only saying it to his reflection. And he's so in love with his reflection, he doesn't move and he dies right there and turns into a flower. And that was my least favourite story in all of Mythos. Not because Fry didn't do a good job, but just because I realised how boring it is in comparison to the other ones.
Yeah, this is actually, I skipped that story. I was like, oh, I don't care.
Yeah, like I really liked it as a kid, and now I'm just kind of like, wow, this isn't even half as dramatic as like Philemon and Baucis. That was so much more interesting.
Yeah, you had all the drama like hidden from you.
Exactly, like I didn't, like 12-year-old me didn't have access to the real tea, and now a 22-year-old me actually gets to see what all the crazy shit was going on in Greece.
Should we quickly explain our rating system?
Yeah, okay. We have a rating system basically for individuality, for characters, for a story. It's kind of hard to rate this one on story because there's so many stories.
Yeah.
But it's pretty much just a case of we rate each category out of 10, and then at the end we have the overall rating out of 50.
Yeah.
So, gonna hear some paper moving here. We have all our...
Because we're professional.
So basically, for book, it's individuality, story and plot, characters, and then protagonist and narrator, and then an optional fifth one, which is adaptation, when it comes to, like, is this book an adaptation of another? You know, like, if it was, say we were reading Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, which is an adaptation of Pride and Prejudice. Like, how does it hold up as an adaptation, you know? Do you think it's interesting?
Tell the story well, yeah.
Because, like, it's a retelling, but also, does it make you feel...
The only one I've read is Zombie, so I wouldn't know. But yeah, so we only have 4 points for today, so
Yeah.
we'll be rating out 40.
So, out of 10 for individuality,
I'd give it a strong 8.
I would also give it a very strong 8 because it's very different to what else you find out. Like, yes, it's a collection of stories, but most collection of stories are either fairy tales or little stories people have written themselves.
Or they're aimed at kids, and this really isn't.
Yes, this one is definitely not aimed at children, and I wouldn't recommend children reading it. But story-wise, I would give it a 10.
I mean, yeah, they're stories that have lasted like millions of years.
Exactly. Like,
so it has to be a 10.
Yeah, it's got to be a 10. Like,
And
there's
even
so
the way,
much in it.
Yeah, and even the way Fry retells it is great, and it's...
He puts his own spin on things. He makes it so interesting.
I just realised this is actually an adaptation.
Oh my god, yeah.
We're idiots.
This is actually an adaptation. Okay, as adaptations go, I'm going to call this a 10 too.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, this is a total 10 because he takes this concept and all these crazy stories of diverse actions by all these gods with crazy powers doing even more bizarre things, and it makes it so easy to be entertained by. And I just think he did a very good job, and he put so much work into this because he's constantly going on about what words we've gotten from this specific ancient Greek
you
character.
can tell he did his research.
Yeah, like he put so much work and love into this book. It was great. Like, he'd be going on about how, so this was a naiad, which is a river nymph, I believe, and because of this naiad, we actually have their name in 10 different species of flower and like 3 different species of beetle, and like all these little tidbits. Like, if you ever want to go to ancient Greek trivia night, I swear to God, read this book first and you're set.
Yeah, you're gonna win. So for characters?
Character-wise, I'm gonna say, I think 9, because there are so many different diverse ones, but a lot of them do bleed together because a lot of the stories are very similar.
It seems that a lot of them were like either bi or pansexual.
I mean, I did love that. As a bi person, representation is so important to me. Like, of course, if I'm reading a book and it's a straight couple, it's whatever, this is fine. But when that's considered the norm and you don't feel like you can get to other kinds of media without having to worry about that, it's kind of like, And then when you get something like this, which is so old, and it just further proves that homosexuality is not a choice and there's nothing wrong with you. You're just living your life. It's great.
And it shows that people used to be more accepting of it.
So much more accepting. Like, for example, hermaphroditus.
Yeah.
Hermes and Aphrodite had a child. It was a son named Hermaphroditus. And he was very modest, but very beautiful and smart. Like, he was a gorgeous guy, really beautiful. But he was very modest and I think actually asexual.
Possibly.
Yeah, because from how it was described, he had literally 0 interest in sex, 0 interest in, like, actions of the flesh, as it was called. Like, not at all, didn't care. People were always trying to seduce him, and he was like, I'm not about that. That's not me, I'm good. So he went off to a river, and a river nymph was swimming there naked, and she was like, ooh, I see this really cute guy. So she was trying to seduce him, being all sexual, rubbing herself and stuff, and he was like, go away, because she was trying more and more aggressively to seduce him, and he was like, no, I don't want this. So she swam off. Then he went for a swim, and she swam back and jumped on him, and he was trying to get her off of him, and she sent a prayer up to the gods saying, exactly the words were, I'm pretty sure, please make it so that me and this mortal can never part. So what the gods did was they fused these two, this woman and this man, into one person.
Yeah.
And that's where you get the word hermaphrodite from, which used to refer to people who are intersex. So, well, people who are intersex who would have both sets of genitals or something, or like I'm trying to remember, I think they're called hidden uteruses, where there's like, you have male presenting genitals, but you also might have like a small ineffective womb inside your body that doesn't actually do anything, but it is there. So things like that, or like someone who was gender fluid maybe, they were all classed as hermaphrodites back then, and they were actually honoured and like in some cases worshipped and considered divine beings, which was freaking awesome, because trans people get treated like shit now.
And Stephen Fry even mentions that like over time it would change, and it's because society changed.
It's bigotry and it's terrible societal standards and just people deciding on the fly what isn't good anymore. And like, we could literally take a leaf out of ancient Greece's book, in this case, not the rapey bits, but in this case of treating people with respect.
Yeah, like in terms of representation, considering the stories are so old, they're quite good at representation.
Like, if you like LGBT content, not only is this book full of queer representation, it's written by a queer man.
Yeah.
So like, I'm gonna say this is great.
And I mean, I don't even have to ask, for narrator, we're giving Stephen Fry a 10.
Full 10. His voice acting is already incredible, his emotion and his deliverance of the lines he's reading, I just thought it was great, and it was such a wonderful read, because he didn't read it in a way that was boring, because while we could fall asleep to it because his voice is so naturally calming and inviting and very good at putting you to ease. Like, Stephen Fry not only narrates these kind of books, he also narrates sleep stories.
Yeah.
So like, if you want to read a calming, like listen to a calming story,
if you want to listen to something that's not about rape while you sleep, yeah,
like he does that perfectly. But also when you're already fully awake and alert, it's very entertaining, and
it's an interesting story.
Exactly, he captures your interest with his words and the way he's speaking. It's fantastic. He just did a very good job.
So overall, we've given it a 47.
I believe so, yeah.
Yes, we've given it a 47 out of 50. That's very high for our first book.
Yeah, like I think that is great. Like, the rating system isn't perfect, but he just did so well, considering he did so much for the research of this book. He put so much love and time into this book. He wrote it, he read it to us. All around, an amazing passion project on his part.
We absolutely recommend you read it if you haven't, and then
if you want to read it physically, there are copies on like Amazon, and I'm sure they're in bookstores, and if you would like to use Audible to listen to it, it is there, and it's perfectly acceptable whether you want to buy it or you want to use a credit if you have an Audible subscription.
It's great. So we definitely recommend you check out the book and like tell us your impressions of it.
Yeah, like if you want to read the book and you want to say how you felt about a certain story, or if you read another one of the series like Heroes, if you want to say what you thought of that one, if you think we should read it, like we'd love for you to get back to us. And like, even if you just think we read this one and enjoyed it, would we like another thing, feel free to suggest something to us.
Yeah, our Twitter is at Adam Kath, no spaces. You can talk to us there, we'll reply to you. We don't have a lot of followers there.
Yeah, no, we are super down to chat with the fandom that we don't have.
Yeah, but if you would like to be part of that fandom, like, let us know, come message us.
If you want to support us by listening to our stuff and giving us a good 5-star rating.
Yeah, give us a 5-star rating on iTunes. But yeah, so don't forget, you can come back next month and we will be talking about The Handmaid's Tale, and we absolutely recommend that if you want to get everything out of this podcast, you read the book beforehand and tell us your impressions.
Yeah, if you want to take some time to read that book and then listen along while we talk about our feelings on it, that would be great. But if at the same time you're not interested in reading it and you just want to hear us give our thoughts on it, that's totally cool, because we don't all have the time to get into the reading. But thank you so much for listening to us today talk about Mythos by Stephen Fry. I'm happy you could take the time.
Tell us what you think. We are so open to feedback. Of course, this is our first episode and we want to get better. We want to grow.
We want to know exactly what you want. Like,
even if you tell us you hated us, as long as you give a reason.
Like,
we'll
if you
listen.
tell us why, like a specific critique of, hey, your quality wasn't great, or hey, maybe you should have rated it with these things in mind too, or hey, I wanted to know this about the book. Tell us that and we'll include it in the next episode.
So thank you for listening. This has been Adam and Kath Book Club. I've been Adam, she's been Kat.
I have.
And we'll see you next month.
See ya.